Hello, Matt from EWA.
Chris with EWA.
Today we are talking about cybersecurity and how important it is to protect yourself by following some of our top 5 tips to protect your personal information, which ultimately will protect your net worth from getting hacked. Chris, how were consumers affected in 2021?
Yeah, so estimates suggest that 54 billion was lost by consumers as a result of identity theft fraud last year.
Wow. There's some very common sense tips when it comes to protecting your identity from cyber crimes. So today we want to provide 5 tips that either A, you may not have thought about before, or B, are probably obvious but annoying. We're here to provide the accountability to make sure you follow through and put some of these processes in motion to protect yourself. Chris, what's tip number 1?
Yeah, so tip number 1 is to use, nowadays your email is everywhere. So tip number 1 is to use a separate email address for financial accounts. If you think with social media, just signing up for subscriptions, your email address nowadays is everywhere. So recommendation number 1 is to use a separate, completely secret email address for anything financial related.
Awesome. I'll admit first, I use the same email address for everything, so didn't hold me accountable to setting that myself. Tell us about tip number 2.
So tip number 2 is password strength. Research suggests that over 50% of users actually have a weak password. So our suggestion is to strengthen this up with some tips such as 1, using a mnemonic password. So an example we have on the screen here is just using your favorite song lyrics. For example, this is Hey Jude, and using the first letters of each word and using that as your password. Taking that a step further, consider using numbers which aren't your date of birth or social security, and using those as brackets in the front and in the end of your password. And then lastly, consider using special characters like an exclamation point or a star within the password to just add a little bit more complexity.
I have one question follow-up. Is that your favorite song?
Is not. Easy example, and just wanted to include it here.
Just curious, I've never heard that song, but okay. All right, so tell us about tip number 3.
Yeah, tip number 3, kind of hand in hand with the password, but consider using a password manager. So one of the worst things that you can do is actually using the same password for all of your accounts. Just like the emails, our information's everywhere nowadays. So our recommendation would be to use a separate password for each account and use an actual password manager to keep everything straight. You can get a password manager for as little as $10 to $30, and this is encrypted, so even if somebody were to get through to your account, they would have to hack each individual password in order to get any of your information.
Excellent. So Chris, going from tip number 3 to tip number 4, all around password protection, this is one of the most annoying things, I think, personally, but probably the most necessary. What is tip number 4?
Yeah, tip number 4 is 2-step verification. So even if somebody does get your password, very important that we have this set up. What this is, you're probably very familiar with it, is a text code or an email coming through to your phone, which you enter a secret code after your password. Then that lets you into your account from there.
Tip number 5 is a very obvious one, but one that is very important to follow, and where it's believed a lot of identity hacks occur.
Yeah, so tip number 5 is around public Wi-Fi. So this is the most dangerous place that you can be online for your data. So suggestion would be, if you have access to a VPN, to always use that whenever you're on public Wi-Fi. What this does is creates your own separate network that completely protects you against any hacking that can happen on this public Wi-Fi. Then the last one would just be to consider using a mobile hotspot if you don't have a VPN. This is just something you can launch like on an iPhone. You go into your settings and toggle on the mobile hotspot. And this is completely separate from a network because you're using your phone's data, but it's the safest method.
Awesome. Thank you, Christopher.
Yeah.
Please let us know if you have any questions on these 5 tips, and this is simply what we believe is an 80-20 analysis. So what's 20% of the tips and tactics you can do to protect 80% of the potential risks that are out there? There's many other things you can do to protect your identity and to protect your accounts from being hacked. there are some other good resources that we would recommend, and we welcome you to email us with questions.